So welcome everybody, everywhere in the world where you are, in the morning, in the evening, or late at night. Welcome to this new edition of the Silver Jubilee series of webinars of the World Federation of Neurorehabilitation. Today, the topic is on brain health, and brain health, in fact, is becoming a more and more important target for many organizations in the world. The World Health Organization is setting up elements of this, and for good reasons. Of course, the brain is the best we have, and we have to deal with that both in a restorative and also in a preventive way. So the topic of brain health, of course, is of paramount importance. Let me first express my gratitude to those people helping us to bring this together, especially Tracy Mole, our executive secretary, and the people around Christian Andreescu in Romania who help us with the technical support. We are very grateful for that, and usually it works pretty well. Thank you very much for that. I have the honor and pleasure that in addition to the three distinguished speakers we have here for this session, we have two other extremely distinguished gentlemen with us, at least for a short time, emphasizing the importance of the issue of brain health. Professor Wolfgang Griswold is with us, who is the president of the World Federation of Neurology, and Professor David Moregiano is also with us, who's the president of the European Federation of Neurorehab Societies. And I may invite both of you, start with Wolfgang, for a short statement.
Yes, thank you, Volker. Dear colleagues, it's a pleasure to be invited to your Silver Jubilee meetings. And I congratulate you on this initiative to proceed on such an important topic with a webinar. The World Federation of Neurology and the World Federation of Rehabilitation will have joint sessions in the future. And I think the topic that Volker just mentioned, brain health, is very important for us in the moment. And although some of us still have some problems of comprehending what it means in total, the main thing is the brain, but of course there are many other things that are involved. As Volker has pointed out, two things are important. One thing is that the WHO has developed a brain health unit. And secondly, as you all might know, in May, the IGAP, the Intersexual Action Plan, is going to be presented. And this is also very closely connected with brain health. And the notion of brain health is important to distribute. As you can see in my background, the World Federation has also the motto of this year, Brain Health for All. And our World Brain Day will be on the 22nd of July. And we will partner not only with the regions of the world, but of course also with our closely related societies as the WFNR and our summary of other societies which are called GNA, Global Neurology Association. We will also produce tools on World Brain Day that could be downloadable from the website, like comments on brain health, ideas for press releases to help people to promote the idea of brain health worldwide. And also yesterday we have decided to also start a competition on essays on what people think is brain health. And it could be something completely different for somebody from Africa, from Asia, from Europe, and maybe even more complicated if somebody is young or old or in a different interest group, what he or she thinks brain health is. And this brings me to the final point of my longer than intended speech. It's also mental health that we have to discuss, and particularly in the present times where we are now, mental health, post-traumatic disorders, depressions somehow belong to our spectrum. With that, I thank you very much for having invited me, and I wish you a successful webinar. Thank you very much.
Okay, Wolfgang, thank you very much for this clear statement. I think we are on a good way with the WFN, the WFNR as well, and then many other organizations, of course, the World Health Organization also, to go into this direction, to look a little bit closer at brain health. I think neurologists have always done that, of course, but make it a political topic, of course, is still something different. And I think it's of paramount importance, definitely. Okay, may I ask Daphne Morijano to say some words on the perspectives of the European Federation of Neurohealth?
Thank you very much, dear Volker. Thank you very much, dear Wolfgang. This is a great pleasure to acknowledge, as always, the excellent cooperation and communication between World Federation of Neurology and World Federation of Neurorehab. This is an extremely important part of our complex construction. I do believe that this valuable concept of brain health should be correctly understood by everybody. And as our brain health, it's actually the ultimate wealth that a human being can enjoy. It is very, very important. At the level of European Federation of Neurorehab, as we are a part of WFNR, we are striving to definitely to integrate and to have a good communication with all national societies and to increase the awareness, particularly of the GAP project, and not only, and to go beyond this, and to, in a very concrete way, to interact with the decision makers and particularly with the ministers of health, with the governments, and to position in this context neurorehab as an extremely important part of the concept itself, as we'll see further on, because I'm also extremely happy to have Professor Michael Brynin today with us as a very prominent personality, also particularly in the field of cognition. We'll see that the cognitive part is a very important part of the general biological reserve. I'm very honored, very happy, and also will pay all our energy to continue with this fantastic series of webinars dedicated to our Jubilee. As we are part of WFNR, and this is a very important, and I believe the WFNR is on a very extremely good direction, very good direction, and very active direction. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Daphne. I think we will certainly go on with this project. Brain health, of course, is in the core of what neurology does all the time, right? It's not a new topic, but
Sure.
I think it's certainly important that we stress this a little bit more, especially also when it comes to let's say in the very early phase, to avoid stroke, for instance, or avoid neurological diseases. So that is certainly a very, very important issue. Okay, so thank you very much so far. We will start with the program proper, and I'm very much delighted and honored to introduce our first distinguished speaker, Professor Michael Brynin from Austria. He probably does not need any introduction. I think everyone knows him. Is for decades one of the key person in bringing stroke research forward in Europe and around the world. He was one of the founder of the Austrian Stroke Society. He ran the first stroke unit in Austria and very much set up this idea of specialized stroke units in Europe. He was president of the European and the World Stroke Organization. And I'm not aware of anyone in the field of stroke who could talk more better and with a better background than Michael on this issue. And his talk will be on brain health. It's a little bit provocative, but brain health, vision or clinical concept. So let's start the video of Professor Brynin's presentation. And after that, we will have a short intermediate discussion. For the audience, please use the question and answer button or the chat room button so that we can have a look on all the incoming things. As far as I can see at the moment, we have people ranging from New Zealand to Bulgaria, joining us at the moment. Okay, so we start Professor Bainin's talk now.
So good morning, good afternoon. It's my pleasure to talk about brain health at this International Congress of Neuroepidemiology and Neurology. My name is Michael Brainin, and I'm talking also on behalf of Yvonne Teuschl, my collaborator and colleague at the Danube University, Krems in Austria. Now, if we Google the brain health trials, we get more than 14,000 hits, and we see a huge increase in the numbers of trials that use in some way a sort of healthy brain concept or item in their study over time. So until the year 2020, we see more than 1,000 such trials published annually. But what is the definition of brain health? And this seems to be a very crucial matter. According to the WHO definition of health in general, 1948, it was a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And brain health today is a key feature to health in general. It needs a cooperation of neurologic, psychiatric, and social researchers, and usually it does not take into consideration mental health, well-being, and happiness in the broader sense of brain health. So Hashinsky and colleagues proposed a definition which I think is quite usable and short enough to use in a general way: a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being through the continuous development and exercise of the brain. To date, the prevention has emphasized the management of risk factors and, to a lesser extent, the implement of protective factors, which is a crucial thing in brain health. There is a need to develop common physical, psychological, and socioeconomic measures of brain health according to age, sex, ethnicity, and other relevant characteristics, and to learn how brain health could be enhanced. Interestingly, a paper recently from Stroke on the epidemiological trends and social determinants of brain health stated that the collective action to define brain health has been limited, partly because of the separation of disciplines and the focus on highly reductionist approaches focused on single specific diseases. Now, this is also true for scientific societies, journals, congresses, and so on. There is one study which I've selected because of its very comprehensive. It is a Spanish study on brain health, or the healthy brain rather, and it does not have results yet, but it plans to include more than 1,000 people, healthy participants, with a huge number of items to collect, with including testing of physiological parameters, neuroimaging, biosampling, and so on, but also ecological issues. So that's the kind of study we need in order to give us an empirical backup for the definition of brain health. On a note, it must be said that a healthy brain is something else than brain health. Healthy brain denotes a brain which is healthy, which means does not have signs of diseases, whereas brain health is a broader concept. So most brain health studies are focused on risk factors, such as risk factors for stroke, denoted down here. And we can see that the bundling of risk factors for stroke is quite substantial, and together with the medical risk factors, we can predict 93% of the stroke. Similar studies from the GBD group have shown also the same percentage. So the avoidance or control of risk factor is one kind of brain health study issue, and we will have a look at the fact whether this is sufficient. This is from a Scottish project showing that lifestyle change has an impact on brain health, and to avoid some factors and promote other factors is an issue that is strongly connected to brain health. Also, Life Simple 7, promoted by the American Heart Association, is a well-known life check kind of scale or score where 7 items can be checked, and this also has been used to promote brain health. Also, vascular brain health has come up quite often, and here in a recent publication from the Finger study group, which is actually a dementia prevention study that has been promoted and multiplicated around the world. So now there is a Finger study movement going on with a lot of similar studies trying to show that prevention of dementia can actually be achieved by control of risk factors. So Mia Kivipelto here states that the evidence mainly comes from high-income countries, and as cognition and dementia have, cognition and dementia have not been the primary outcomes of many trials. As cognitive aging occurs over decades, it's unclear whether treatment during the late life window is optimal for dementia prevention or whether it has to start much earlier. So furthermore, many trials have not been powered to explore interactions with modifiers such as age, race, or apolipoprotein E. Now, this vascular brain health concept is very much promoted and there are ongoing studies showing that stroke and dementia together can actually be prevented. In the Brain Health Learn and Act group, which is a large group that has recently published some discussions and issues pertinent to brain health, they state that the triple threat is constituted by stroke, ischemic heart disease, and dementia. And these are the 3 main diseases which have a huge load of disability, and they share the same risk factors and protective factors. They pose also risks for each other and are preventable to a different degree. So as we tend to manage one disease at the time, multi-morbidity is much more common. We have to realize that compared to single disease, especially in the elderly. So this triple threat has to be prevented as a triple threat and not focused on single diseases if we want to promote brain health in elderly people. Hashinsky and colleagues, they compare brain health to the blind man and the elephant story, where you can see that depending on where the blind man touches the elephant, he comes to a different conclusion what this is all about. So it can be a spear, a snake, a tree, a wall, and so on, depending on where you just are. And he compares the brain health definition or brain health concept to this old Persian allegory. Now, the WHO has already been active 2020 and has stated that brain health issues are important, especially when talking about autism spectrum disorders, epilepsy, and dementia. Also recently, there has been a statement by the WHO on epilepsy and neurological disorders. So the recognition that there is a whole group of diseases that are relevant for brain health has also been promoted by the WHO. And furthermore, some very important issues for low and middle income countries have also been mentioned by the WHO, which I think is most relevant because the low and middle income countries are the countries where most of these diseases are actually pertinent, happening. So the the broader definition of brain health includes social determinants and not just avoidance or control of risk factors. So we see that there is a strong association between social disadvantage and poor mental health. And on an individual level, poverty, childhood adversity, and violence are key factors for mental disorders. And COVID-19 pandemic has shown that social determinants in causing mental and physical illness are quite relevant. This editorial by the Lancet concludes that by demanding good brain health, clinicians, psychiatrists, neurologists, health professionals, researchers might be encouraged to leave their silos and work together for a common good. A holistic suite of interventions are needed for good brain health, not just across the whole life course, but also in society at large. So if we look at the discourses or narratives on brain health today, we can see several, we can make several observations. For many of these trials or observational studies, it is used as a marketing item and not much more for study designs or grant applications, but no specific outcome is attached to measuring brain health. There are also several narrow definitions of brain health, which are focused on single disease prevention or prevention of disease groups, like we have seen for dementia prevention, which I just showed. It is used as a workable definition of the triple threat, as mentioned by Hashinsky, which not only focuses on avoidance of risk factors, but also promotion of protective factors. But in contrast to all the other definitions or concepts used, a global application of brain health, especially for low and middle income countries, must be considered to include also issues of environment, climate, socioeconomic status, education, child development, mental health, education, and several more. So we can look at the summary of definitions. Brain health can be a risk factor-oriented definition, like avoidance or absence of nicotine, alcohol, and so on. Interestingly, it can be used not only for the avoidance or control of risk factors, but also include biomarkers or imaging markers, which is quite interesting because if we use imaging to look for signs of disease in the brain, like silent infarcts and so on, this makes this issue much more sensitive and includes many other aspects of illness, so that this brain health application becomes more comprehensive. And third, that brain health includes some health-driven factors: nutrition, physical exercise, sleep, and community engagement, which is much more positive and driven towards social factors. But again, in contrast to all the others, a global definition of brain health must be much broader, including environment, climate, universal health coverage, mental health, neurodevelopmental issues, education, gender, ethnicity. Let me show you how the WHO, which has now an office for brain health in Geneva, defines this issue. So they say that brain health is an emerging and growing concept. It encompasses neural development, plasticity, functioning and recovery across the life course. And good brain health is a state in which every individual can realize their own abilities and optimize their cognitive, emotional, psychological, and behavioral functioning to cope with life situations. Sorry. So we've come a long way since 1948, when we had the general definition of health. So these conditions require multi-sectoral and interdisciplinary collaborations with a holistic, person-centered approach focused on promotion, prevention, treatment, care, and rehabilitation over the lifespan, and the active engagement of persons experiencing the conditions and their families and carers as appropriate. Now, this includes also the organization of medical communities, medical societies, journals, and so on. I think with the application of this kind of concept, we have to rethink the way we communicate our scientific findings to the medical and general public. Let me just say a few words to make clear what I mean by environment and how this might affect brain health. So on a recent webinar on environment and stroke, which we had with the World Stroke Organization, Dr. Jacques Rice said that for stroke relevant are a lot of environmental factors, such as the oceanic winds, the development of megacities, wildfires, dust, insect threats with the south-north gradient, urban life and crowding in view of shortages of food or sanitation and drinking water. Dr. Giraud also talked about air pollution, noise traffic, and psychosocial risks such as sleep duration as a very important factor for brain health, sleep quality and sleep duration. So environment and stroke do have a strong connection, and brain health has to consider these kinds of factors. If we look at air pollution worldwide, again, we can see that the distribution in darker red colors is especially in low and middle income countries in Africa and Asia. So we have to keep in mind that this is not an issue only relevant to well-developed countries like Europe, Australia, and the Americas. Now, have a look at pollution and the developing brain. Recently published in the Lancet, we have to consider that lead, mercury, polychlorinated biphenyls, organophosphate insecticides, brominated flame retardants, which are substances that keep textiles, but also electrical equipment from going up in flames, fine particulate PM2.5 air pollution. So all these factors have, according to specialists, been linked to decreased cognitive function, diminished intelligence quotient, shortened attention span, increased risk for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Lead has additionally been linked to school failure, conduct disorder, and increased risk of incarceration. Chemical pollution tends to concentrate in poor, minority, and marginalized communities and can magnify the negative aspects of social disadvantage on mental health. Just for you to know, President Biden's budget plan included an end to lead poisoning in the USA by replacing contaminated water pipes, and this has an enormous potential for prevention, according to the authors of this article. Now let's have a look at the air pollution and cardiovascular health. There is a dose-effect relationship. You can see the blue line. This is stroke. The red line is ischemic heart disease. And we can see that the brain is much more sensitive to being damaged by air pollution than is the heart. So we have to keep this in mind, that the brain is especially vulnerable to environmental toxicity. Now, one thing to expect is that life expectancy is going up and has been going up the past 200 years. So brain health actually should enable us to extend our lifespan even more. This in the recent decades has been due to a decline in late life mortality. So this means that brain health has to focus especially on elderly people if we want to increase the lifespan. And on a visionary scale, let's have a look at the brain health generation and a peek into the futures. You know, the centennials are born after the turn of the century, or around the turn of the century. They are the generation that have never known the world without the internet. They will in the future have the benefit of some memory enhancers and other biological interfaces and so on. So they will have an increase in quality of life, satisfaction, and also longevity. It is reasonable to assume that this centennial generation, which will have more brain health than we might have, they will live up to 100 and more. And so there will be true centennials, and they will never know many diseases which we know. For example, looking back, I've never seen a case of acute polio or Yersinia pestis, and they might never know a number of diseases which for us seem to be quite frequent. So on a general scale, I think the brain health concept should encompass also a perspective for young people today. This definition by Hashinsky seems to be quite usable: a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being through the continuous development and exercise of the brain. But we still need a more profound and broader approach that unites specialists from neurology, psychiatry, and social sciences. Currently, the concept of brain health is quite heterogeneous and is not yet determined in a uniform way that is useful for clinical research. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, Michael, thank you very, very much for this very comprehensive view on brain health issues. I think what becomes pretty clear from all of this, that there's basically nothing what we do in terms of politics, decision making, and so forth, which is not in some sense related to brain health, of course, right? Because it's an inherent anthropological property, which is of course of primary importance. The question is what you mentioned on these centennials, right? They will probably not be afflicted with the plague or polio, but they might be affected with other coronaviruses in future. And so the story basically never ends, because we cannot be completely sure that we are really approaching more and more safer medical world. And the brain health concept, I think, is extremely important, but it's a general political concept with a lot of allusions also to philosophy and to how we conceive that people would like to live and they tend to live and so forth. So let me have a short look at the chat room. Where is it? There. Chat room is all of it. Nice, good afternoon and things like that, but no questions yet. Let me look at the question and answer room. There's nothing yet in. So to the audience, more increasing to the audience, would be great if you have questions. You have the opportunity to ask all of us on this. If there are no burning questions at the moment, I think we go on.
Can I make a
Volker, one comment?
Yeah, sure.
Can I make a comment?
From my side, it was a great presentation as always. Michael spoils us with his excellent concepts and presentations regarding this. So I also do believe that one important component in the future related to brain health will stay in the field of cerebrovascular disorders. So I think from this point on, we can solve, because in this territory are situated those aspects that we can influence in the future. So I think an important focus on this side would be really important to be part of the awareness towards our politicians or whatever technocrats will play a major role in the future here. So this was an important comment that I just wanted to launch. Yes.
I have a comment to Volker, if I may. You gave a rather gloomy outlook in the end. I think we have to consider that life expectancy has more than doubled in the last 200 years. And I'm not going to list now what happened to mankind in the last 200 years. So I think in spite of all these threats and dangers, I think the outlook can be quite optimistic, and there will be an increase of life expectancy in the coming generation. So the current generation, which is the one that's born now, the life expectancy, at least in high-income countries, will be around 100. So I think that's a good outlook, and brain health certainly plays a big part in that. Of course, nobody knows for sure anything, but I think the way the curve goes, it's rather reassuring.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. No doubt about it. But that will, of course, generate new problems in addition, necessarily. What is a useful life in very old people, for instance, and what sort of entertainment and what sort of they need and so forth. So that of course, generates new civilizational challenges necessarily. Absolutely. And that, of course, is also related to the brain health problem. I will not claim that neurologists will be the philosophers of the future in this respect, but in some sense, one could, taking this idea of brain health, bringing neurologists, psychiatrists, and neuro people in general into a pivotal position on decision making. which may be good, right?
Wolfgang has a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted, Michael, I thank you for this excellent talk. And I think it's so important to make us aware that we cannot solve all problems with risks and individual diseases. And I think on the way where we are now in neurology, every specialty looks into something that may be a risk, and broadening this concept into the wider context, in particular the social aspects, and also, let's say, those things that are given like in low middle income countries where there's little choice to do any of these choices to improve mental health is important. And I think this is the way forward to think of it and move out of the whole of the risk factors into the broader sense. Thank you.
Well, there were two questions from the question and answer room. One is, how can we measure brain health in the clinic?
Well, if that's a question to me, I must say we can't. We can't. The large number of trials that use the term brain health use it as a teaser, but not as a solid concept, which is thoroughly defined and can be used as an outcome measure. So today, if you're applying for a grant in neurology, I recommend you to use the word brain health. This increases the probability that you will get support, but it doesn't really enrich your concept if you're not using a rigid definition. So that was my final conclusion, is that Hashinsky's definition is really worthwhile to think about, but there is not yet a brain health scale, and there probably can't ever be, if we really entertain the wider concept of brain health. If we're just talking about Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's disease, then of course, the idea of a healthy brain is more or less clear. So my answer is we cannot yet measure it in the clinic, and we are far away from that.
There's another question, or more, it's more a comment. I have found the centennials more inactive and overweight. This might prevent them from realizing the projected 100 years of life.
Yeah. Well, you can always say that we're an unimportant sidearm of the evolution, and the cockroaches will survive mankind much easier. Yeah, well, we'll just have to sit it out, don't we?
Okay, probably.
Yeah.
Okay, at the moment, I do not see any other questions. Any other comments from your side at the moment? No? Oh, so then
one very quick comment.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Thank you very much. Yeah, just to contribute to the debate about brain health, assessment of brain health, definitely is an holistic concept. And so to measure it, therefore, will require multidimensional parameters, because it involves different forms of functioning, cognitive functioning, social functioning, emotional, and all of that. So really, just like sometimes how tough it is to assess cognitive function with a whole battery of neuropsych tools, it's probably going to be necessary, if at all we're going to ever develop something that can be used objectively to assess brain health, is going to be a battery of tools that will assess neurological physical function, that will assess mental function, cognitive function, emotional function, social function, and all of that, to really be able to arrive at, and perhaps even look at other tools that I imagine to assess brain health, new biomarkers, imaging, genomics, transomics, to really look at everything and sum it up and say, this is where it is. So it's going to be really complex and tough, but maybe snippets of it can be assessed at some point. I'm sure over time, the scientific community will agree on something. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mayowa. Any other comments, Dafin? Not obviously at the moment. So then I think we can proceed with the program. Our next speaker, unfortunately, Professor Bassetti cannot be with us today. some reasons. Professor Bassetti is the full professor of neurology at the University of Bern many years, and he is also at the moment the president of the European Academy of Neurology. And he has had a lifelong interest in looking at sleep and its importance for, if you like, brain health. And this afternoon or today, he's going to speak about the EAN, or the European Academy of Neurology, Brain Health Strategy. So I think we can start Professor Bassetti's video.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, my name is Claudio Bassetti. I'm full professor of neurology at the University Hospital in Bern, Switzerland, and current president of the European Academy of Neurology. I would like to thank the board of the World Federation for Neurorehabilitation for the kind invitation to be with you today at the Jubilee seminar series to talk about the EAN and its brain health strategy. Let me start with the European Academy of Neurology. This is a society which has the vision to be the home of neurologists for all individuals, all specialists, all neurologists who aim at improving patients' care, with a mission to reduce the burden of neurological disorders. I speak today on behalf of my board, which is shown here. I will not introduce all the members of the board. Please appreciate the diversity of age, gender, and I would like to emphasize also the fact that they represent different countries and different subspecialties. Now, the EAN is a large society which includes 47 European member societies, national societies, and 10 international member societies from Northern Africa and the Near East. It counts over 45,000 members, of which over 4,000 individual members. And I'm proud to say that we have a rapidly increasing number of young neurologists in training, over 1,000 so far, coming from over 30 countries across the continent. Since 2020, we started a new section for students, the next generation of neurologists, and we count already 500 students in our section. In 2019, when I took over the presidency of the EAN, we redefined the priorities of the European Academy, which are shown in this picture. You recognize the home of neurology, the mission of reducing the burden of neurological disorders, and you see the four main pillars of our current strategy: education, science, membership, and advocacy. And I will say in few words the current updates, or present the current updates on these priorities. First, science. Obviously, science is an important element of our annual Congress. We do have also research fellowships. We support young residents to visit research labs in Europe. We have a very active group of scientific panels representing all subspecialties of neurology. We have 28 of them, and they assure also the contact with the subspecialty European societies. We have a journal, European Journal of Neurology, which in 2019 changed the editor-in-chief and the editorial board. We have seen an increase in submission rate. We doubled the submission rate, and the impact factor raised last year to 6.1. We have a very active production of guidelines. We count over 107 of them. And in the last 12, 18 months, the production team has been enlarged, and we introduced several novelties, which I will not have time now to enter in details with right now. Now, one big novelty has been also the start of a neuroscience school. And this year it was for the first time organized with the topic of translational research. And this is an initiative which was extremely well accepted by our audience, by the young neurologists and neuroscientists. We have a full house within a few weeks, and we plan to repeat it next year. Science means also supporting and promoting scientific activities, studies across countries on overarching topics. This led to these three main studies in the recent month. The first one was the creation of a registry for the study of complication of COVID, the so-called energy registry, which was started in spring 2020. We have today over 3,000 patients from over 30 centers from over 40 countries, and we have almost 10 publications coming out from this very important initiative. By the way, Energy has already started also cooperation with other registries in North America and in Europe. A second study that we have started last year is a systematic assessment of the burden, economic burden of the costs of neurological diseases. The last study published dates of 2011. And the third study is a study we conduct with several other societies, including the European Sleep Research Society and European Psychiatric Association, on the frequency and impact on quality of life, health, and costs of the two main most common sleep-wake symptoms: sleepiness, excessive daytime sleepiness, insomnia. What can I say about the education? Well, obviously, we have the annual Congress, and traditionally our spring and autumn schools. We have been supporting clinical fellowship, visiting residents from one center to the other. And in 2021, and right now with the UMS, we have finalized an in-depth revision of the residency program for neurology in Europe, the European training requirements for neurology. This is a white paper that can be used and is used by different countries when they plan their residency programs or the revisions of their programs. Now, two novelties. The student fellowships is a consequence of the student section. We have here the teaser, and we do support students visiting, again, neurology departments in Europe. And I'm very proud to say that we have a state-of-the-art, very new e-learning platform, which will offer education material at all levels of training, from the residents to the advanced specialized neurologists. From summer, from Vienna, there will be the inauguration of this platform. We do obviously what we can, our best, to promote activities that may turn out to be of interest for our members. We have started a mentorship program last year. We created a gender and diversity task force, and also a task force which I chair, that is reviewing the requirements and also the opportunities, but also the challenges of general neurology, for instance, in the education of the future. Now, the last priority is advocacy. The EAN has been, since its birth in 2014-15, been interacting with the national societies and with the specialty societies. I would like to say that over the last couple of years, we have intensified the interaction with the national societies, not only in inviting the delegates and the presidents to the European meeting once a year, but in actually visiting the national society at the national meetings, the so-called EAN days, or with board members, including the president, giving presentation at the national society meetings. I was at the German, I was at the Italian, I was at the Polish, I was at the Romanian and Russian society, etc. And we have also started a new tradition of meetings of the EN boards with the boards of the national societies, hopefully face-to-face meetings. So far, these were mainly virtual meetings. We have interactions and cooperation with European Brain Council, with the European Federation of Neurological Association, the patient organization, with whom we actually have been developing a so-called One Neurology campaign to raise the awareness towards neurological disorders and the burden of neurological disorders. We have been working with the WHO on the Global Action Plan. I will come back to this point in a second, and with the World Federation we have joined their brain health campaign, and we have been developing regional teaching courses, for instance, in Africa with the WFN. I mentioned this very important GAP, Global Action Plan on Epilepsy and Other Neurological Disorders. This is going to be presented and most probably approved by the 75th WHO Assembly, which will take place in May of this year. This is the first time that the WHO recognizes the importance of neurological diseases, and this will have an impact on the future policy, political and health policies of the countries across the world, including Europe. And in fact, as I mentioned, we supported the preparation of this document, and we supported politically this initiative of the WHO with a joint communique which was signed by 43 of the 47 presidents of the European National Society. So it's a very strong signal of the unity of the European Academy of Neurology in this context, supporting the GAP document. So let's talk now about brain health. Why shall we talk about brain health? Because we need to decrease the burden of neurological disorders, and despite the advancement in diagnostic and treatment opportunities, the burden remains high, and we need also to do our best to promote brain health and prevent neurological disorders. The burden is very high. These are recent data from Europe, and this led us estimate that every third citizen in our population will suffer of a neurological disease. A recent paper has shown that in 2017, neurological disorders were the third most common cause of death and disability, following oncological and cardiovascular diseases. And a study published over 10 years ago in the European Journal of Neuropharmacology estimated the cost of neurological disorder to be around 300 billion. As I mentioned, DN has launched a systematic study on the economic burden of neurological disorder, the first results of which hopefully will be presented in Vienna in June this year. So the WHO has defined brain health as an initiative, as an approach to promote optimal brain development, cognitive health, and well-being for all across the life course. This is not a disease-centered definition, is a person-centered approach, focusing not only on treatment, care, and rehabilitation, but also on promotion of health and prevention. And the EAN essentially welcome and support this approach. This is a cartoon summarizing the WHO integrated approach to neurological condition disorders. Again, you recognize the prevention, the diagnostic approach, the treatment, and rehabilitation. Now, many societies, I'm thinking about dementia societies, stroke societies around the world and also in Europe, have developed their own brain health strategies. What the EAN, and here we second and we support what the WHO has promoted as an approach. What the EAN does different is, I would say, an holistic approach, which is not disease specific, and it's not specific to a specific stage of life or life section. The slogan we use is the one that is shown here: one brain, one life, one approach. The EAN Brain Health Strategy aims to develop a holistic approach to brain health, which benefits society, not just through prevention in order to decrease the burden, but also to improve well-being and productivity throughout an individual life course. Again, the idea that we have not one disease, not one life section, and not just a disease-oriented approach. Well, as you probably know, the definition of brain health and the concept in itself does bring also challenges and gaps with it. The determinants and assessment of brain health is to some extent still somewhat unclear. The scientific evidence for prevention for stroke and dementia are increasing. For many other neurological disorders, still the knowledge is still limited. The awareness about neurological disorder, brain health, is generally speaking among neurologists, and even more so in among other specialists and in the general population insufficient. And we need to understand that each country will need a specific local implementation. Talking about neurological disorders and brain health in Central Europe, Northern Europe, Southern Europe, Africa or Asia or South America, request a specific local implementation and approach. The EAN has developed its strategy around these 5 pillars. First, contribute to a global international brain health approach. Second, supporting international and national policy making. Third, fostering research. Fourth, promoting education. And fifth, raising public awareness. Let me illustrate these 5 points with some examples in the next few slides. So the first point, contribute to a global international brain health approach. DN sees and wants to be seen as a driving force in the international brain health approach. The WFN, the WHO, many other specialized neurological societies have been developing brain health activities, and we want to contribute to this international effort and give our contribution. In Europe, we want to work with a subspecialty and also with the national societies, and some initiatives have started in this context. We have been interacting, for instance, with the Norwegian National Society, which is the first one which actually launched in 2017 a brain health campaign. And we want to enhance our interactions and links with the WHO, with the World Federation of Neurology and other stakeholders, including specialty societies like yours, the EBC, the EFNA, academic institutions and industry, which has shown quite an interest in the topic of brain health and prevention of neurological disorders. We want to support national policy makings and international. What we are doing today is mapping neurology, neurological disorders, neurological services, working force in Europe. We are also mapping what different national societies have developed in terms of brain and neurological plans. And we would like to provide to the national societies, when they decide to support brain health activities, to provide these societies with tools to advocate for brain health and neurological disorders. And some activities have been starting with the Spanish society, with the Portuguese, with the German societies. Eventually, we would like also to support the creation of ambassadors at national level to promote brain health across the continent. More research is needed. I already alluded to the fact that the determinants and predictors of brain health are still to be better understood. We need to create new metrics, new multidimensional approaches to assess brain health. And we would like to promote research that, test the possibility to apply brain health approaches to research, but also to health delivery. This is a figure that we have prepared for a paper that is currently in review in the European Journal of Neurology. You see many possible potential determinants of brain health. Some of them are proven, some of them have been suggested by recent studies. We group them in the group or in the list of factors that preserve brain health. We recognize the importance of protecting the brain. Factors such as cholesterol, high blood pressure, sleep loss that may lead to brain damage. Or then the third level is the plan level, where we think that societal approaches which deal with socioeconomical factors, psychological factors, but also political factors may also be important in determining brain health. In our strategy, we have the education as an important pillar. So we want to educate students about the importance of brain health and prevention of neurological disorders, but also GPs, general neurologists, as well as GPs and other health professionals. I'm thinking about experts in social and preventive medicine. We do have in our task force representatives of this professionality. And obviously, we want to educate the general public What are the next steps? Well, as I mentioned, we have our strategy paper being finalized and is now in revision. We have planned the important international summit, which will take place in hybrid form in Vienna and Brussels in May 31, 2022. I would be happy to welcome you attending this afternoon meeting. We will have the health ministers of France and the Czech Republic talking about brain health and neurological disorders, and we will have guests from the European, from the EU, from the WHO, from the WFN, from the EBC, from the EAN, discussing the burden of neurological disorders, brain health, and what Europe can and should do to promote a better care and a better awareness for neurological disorders in terms of health initiatives and also research. We have planned also the next virtual meeting with all presidents of the national societies, where we will discuss an update on brain health activities in June. We will meet them again in person in Vienna. We have also a presidential dinner with the presidents of the national societies. And we have also, together with the WFN, at our Congress in Vienna, a brain health symposium where specific aspects of brain health initiatives in Europe and worldwide will be discussed. So I hope I could give you a useful glance on the recent development of what the EAN does, and also about our first initiatives around the EAN brain health campaign. And having said this, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I would really be honored and pleased to welcome you all at our 8th EAN Congress, which will be taking place in Vienna, face-to-face with virtual elements from June 25 to June 28. Thank you again, and enjoy the series of the World Federation. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we thank Professor Bassetti for his talk. Unfortunately, he will not be in a position to answer questions directly, but if there are questions, we can certainly put them forward. Let me have a short look at there's nothing in the question and answer box.
Volker, I have a comment.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, thank you very much. So I'm happy that we have on our big plate this important topic, also from the perspective of EAN. I have worked a lot with the national societies and pushing the national societies issue within EAN. It was very important. And I think this was a very good and practical development here, as this was somehow related to all advocacy and communication aspect that we have developed for many years. So this should be further on a very good interface for our rehab network in order to have a follow-up with what have been developed within the frame of national societies of neurology. And from my personal interactions with all these societies, I have seen a tremendous interest towards these neuro rehab aspects. Yes, so I think this is a great emerging opportunity by using these networks within the frame of the brain health concept. So this was just a comment based on what Claudio presented.
That's certainly clear that we need more and more interaction between all the involved societies to come to a, let's say, more or less common, at least a platform for a discourse, and eventually for an outreach of common activity. And it's of course it's a very political issue at the end of the day. That's for sure. Okay, any more questions or comments, Mayova?
Yes, I think rehabilitation is one of the key pillars. There's actually a brain health quadrangle, which I proposed, which includes, of course, the first pillar is surveillance and research. The second pillar is prevention, promotion, The third pillar is acute care for conditions like status epilepticus or acute stroke that requires acute care. And of course, rehabilitation, which is extremely important for recovery and for reintegration. So I think this new awareness, this new reawakening of human beings to the importance of the brain as the king of the body, and as the most important aspect of the human being, which is central to human capacity, is something we can really leverage. And indeed, I've recognized this. I think we should recognize this as a revolution. All of the previous revolutions we've experienced, industrial revolutions, have not been homocentric. This is actually the only anthropocentric so far revolution, which I think is really very important. And rehabilitation has a very key role to play in ensuring that people are able to recover and live a meaningful life, regardless of physical challenges they might be having. Their mental function, brain health, brain capacity, creativity should still be preserved. And I think we owe the world this role to play as WFNR, and we will play it in conjunction with everybody in this new reawakening.
Yeah, thank you for that statement. I think that's clear. And I was very happy that the WHO, in some sense, the last couple of years, has changed their mind, going away from just communicable diseases and all this, and bringing neurological problems in their global action plan. We will see how far this is going to proceed. Okay, let me have a look. There are no further questions in the question box. So Michael, any comments?
No, thank you. Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. Oh, so in this case, we can proceed to the next speaker. It's my real pleasure to welcome our friend Mayowa Afolabi from Nigeria. He is certainly one of the most prominent neurologists in Africa, with a tremendous track record. And he is, for the WFNR, one of our pillar persons in this part of the world, which still, my impression, is still a little bit too much neglected. And he is the regional vice president for the WFNR for Sub-Saharan Africa. And he's doing a tremendous work in increasing, let's say, ideas of neurorehabilitation and neurorehabilitation services in this part of the world, but by whatever means. But this is not all. He is a very, very active scientist with an enormous scientific track record. And for years, he has had an interest in looking at the impact of nutrition on brain health. And therefore, Mayowa, I'm very grateful that you join us today. And he will give a talk on the importance of healthy diet. So that will be a culinary delight, probably. We'll see. Okay, so we can play Professor Afolabi's video.
Good day, everyone. Let me start by thanking the organizers of this series of WFNR Silver Jubilee webinar for the kind invitation to give this talk on a very topical issue, which is brain health and how we can advance brain health by improving our diet. So I'll be speaking today about advances in brain health, importance of a healthy diet. Again, I wish to congratulate wholeheartedly and heartily the WFNR on the occasion of the Silver Jubilee of this foremost organization promoting neural repair and recovery across the globe. Brain health has become a topical issue, and there have been a lot of definitions. I will not be going into details about those series of definitions, but suffice it to just highlight the definition by WHO. Brain health is an emerging and growing concept that encompasses neural development, plasticity, functioning, and recovery. And as neurorehabilitation organization, we are interested in neuroplasticity, functioning, and recovery. Good brain health is a state in which every individual can realize their own abilities and optimize their cognitive, emotional, psychological, and behavioral functioning to cope with life situations, according to the WHO. So I try to synthesize the key elements of all the different definitions to arrive at this. Brain health is the complete functioning of the brain across the life course to support the full physical, mental, and that includes psychological, as well as emotional and cognitive, social, and that includes behavioral. So therefore, brain health is the complete functioning of the brain across the life course to support the full physical, mental, social, and spiritual well-being and quality of life of an individual towards attaining and maintaining the epitome of a meaningful, impactful, purposeful, and productive life. The world had in the past witnessed the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, and indeed the information revolution. But now we know that we're about to experience the neurologic revolution. So far, this is the only revolution that is homocentric. All the others, agricultural, industrial, information, are not putting man at the center, but other objects. So therefore, this revolution will power all aspects of human well-being and welfare through brain health. Of course, now we realize that brain health is very, very important for brain capital, and that human capital is driven by brain capital. Brain capital consists of the knowledge, creative skills, and optimal brain health that people accumulate through their lives, enabling them to realize their potential as productive members of society. Brain health includes cognitive, emotional, behavioral strengths, as I mentioned earlier on. And brain economy is becoming more and more important, where most new jobs demands cognitive rather than manual skills, where innovation is a tangible deliverable of employee mental productivity. Brain skills are also important in terms of creativity, systems integration, entrepreneurship, design thinking, resilience cognition, social cognition, emotional regulation, self-awareness, and self-control. And in fact, in these aspects, attributes of brain skills, human beings cannot be replaced by artificial intelligence. And that tells us the importance of brain capital and brain health. Now, what are the top conditions that are afflicting brain health across the globe, affecting disability adjusted life years? Stroke, migraine, dementias, meningitis, epilepsy, spinal cord injury, traumatic brain injury, brain and other CNS cancers, tension type headache, encephalitis, Parkinson's disease, other neurological conditions like depression and sleep disorders, tetanus, multiple sclerosis, and motor neuron diseases. These are the burdens. And what are the ways by which we can tackle this burden? Through the brain quadrangle, which includes surveillance, and that includes establishing a framework for regular monitoring of the burden of these diseases as well as their risk factors, which would help us to be able to design intervention that will target these risk factors to reduce their impact and therefore reduce the incidence of those conditions through prevention, and also new interventions for acute care and rehabilitation, which are all very important. Now we are beginning to realize the importance of food and dietary consumption and the impact they have on cognitive function, and this is evolving across the life course. Now, the food intake and cognition are related. In fact, food intake has effects on visceral signals that have influence on cognitive function, activate molecular systems that are associated with synaptic plasticity and learning, and of course maintaining neuronal excitability and synaptic function. We can see that food intake has impacts on IGF-1, insulin, GLP-1, leptin, and this has influences and impact on limbic system, hypothalamus, and the entire neuronal network within the brain, and also importance and impact on body physiology. Now we're going to be examining key diets, like the Mediterranean diet, the DASH diet, the MIND diet, and ketogenic diet. But we'll be focusing on the Mediterranean diet and MIND diet, which has been shown to have significant impact on cognitive function and brain health. So Mediterranean diet, we call that MED diet, and the DASH diet, that's this dietary approach to stop hypertension, and Mediterranean dietary approaches to stop hypertension, that's Mediterranean dash intervention for neurodegenerative delay, that's MIND diet. So we'll be looking at those. We'll be looking at micronutrients as well as the macronutrients. Now, looking at the MED diet and cognition, MED diet includes high intake of plant-based foods with fish and olive oil as a primary source of fat, complemented by low intake of dairy products, red meat, and moderate amount of wine. Mediterranean diet was associated with 17% reduction in the risk of mild cognitive impairment and 40% reduction in the risk of Alzheimer's disease, respectively, as you can see. DASH diet and cognition. DASH diet includes high intake of plant-based foods with low intakes of sodium, sweetened beverages, and red meat. And these also has been associated with improved cognitive function, as you can see, including improved psychomotor speed. Now, MIND diet is a combination of Mediterranean diet and DASH diet and includes high intake of green leafy vegetables, whole grains, fish, legumes, berries, and olive oil, complemented by low intakes of butter, cheese, red meat, fried food, pastries, and a moderate amount of wine. And this has been associated with 15% reduction in the risk of dementia. So therefore, diet has impact on cognition. A common feature of all these diets, which has been shown to improve cognitive function, is largely related to the fact that they are plant-based. They contain vegetables, whole grains, fruits, and has high micronutrient intakes, with moderate energy and macronutrient intakes and low meat consumption. So, in terms of macronutrient intake, low carbohydrate intake, ranging from 45% to 51%, presented with the lowest risk of dementia, as we can see. Moderate protein intake, 16 to 18%, 16 to 21%, was associated with lowest risk of dementia. And both low and high protein intake conferred greater dementia risk, as we can see. Vegetables and fruits, on the other hand, are inversely associated with incident dementia among Japanese in a dose response time. So higher vegetable consumption has been found to be associated with lower incidence of stroke, cerebrovascular disease, and cardiovascular events, as we can see. And indeed, this has been proven in different settings. In the Siren study in Ghana and Nigeria, we were able to establish a dose-response relationship between vegetable consumption and stroke, such that daily consumption of green leafy vegetable protected with non-overlapping confidence interval, protected more than weekly consumption. And of course, by far better than never or monthly consumption as a reference. And this is published in Lancet. So we found that green leafy vegetables protected against stroke, all types of stroke, stroke in the young and the old, in males and females, and indeed severe stroke. The mechanisms are still being studied. In these are recently accepted publication, which is going to be published. We already got the author's proof corrected. We found that green leafy vegetable or vegetable dense diets reduces significantly and substantially the risk of stroke, whereas red meaty diet promotes the risk of stroke. And we all know that cerebral atherosclerosis is a risk factor for disorders of the cerebrovascular diseases, including stroke and vascular cognitive impairment. And of course, they are also risk factor for even all types of dementia and cognitive dysfunction. So plant-based diets lower the risk of stroke, whereas red meat increases the risk of stroke. So plant-based diets are rich in micronutrients, including vitamins B, C, E, and flavonoids, and these have been found to protect cognitive function, as you can see. So, but some of these studies have limitations in their imprecision in dietary assessment and probably also in neurocognitive assessment. Therefore, in the future, longitudinal studies are required to further establish the importance of nutrient-defined dietary interventions on cognitive impairment. And we also need to look at genetically predicted causal association for relationship between diet and cognitive function. And multimodal interventions combine healthy diets with other lifestyle changes, physical activity, smoking cessation, evaluating their impact on cognitive function and overall brain health. So what are the key messages? It is very clear that diet play a critical role in cognitive function and brain health across the life course. Consumption of plant-based diets, particularly rich in vegetable, is likely to boost cognitive function. Heavy consumption of energy-dense and meat-based diets might be unhealthy for optimal cognitive function. Early exposure to healthy diets could promote optimal cognitive performance and improve brain health. So then, the maxim, you are what you eat, at least in terms of the body and the brain, may still be true. Indeed, Hippocrates said, our food should be our medicine, and our medicine should be our food. To promote brain health. And brain health should be at the center of human health, and that's SDG 3. And SDG 3, which is human health, should be at the center of all SDGs. Thank you so much for this invitation, and thank you so much for listening. So I wish you a good brain health and encourage you to eat healthy to maintain and improve your brain health. And congratulations once again to the WFN.
Okay, Mayova, thank you very, very much for this very good and comprehensive review. Yeah, what we should eat and what we probably should not eat. That's certainly an issue. I have one question, and this is related not only to the, let's say, quality or the composition of food, but it's also related to the frequency of eating. And I think we have a lot of evidence that it's better not to eat too much, that's for sure, but also not to eat too often. Basically, you should eat only when you're hungry. That's the easiest way, of course. How do you feel about that? The frequency of food intake?
Absolutely. So I think that's very, very important. And I think one of the slides I show that caloric consumption, has to be moderate. Those who exceed what is a moderate level of caloric consumption, particularly once one reaches middle age, when you're not really using the extra calories to grow, or the extra protein to grow, you should only eat what you will expend. So if not, then obesity sets in, meaning that basically is just a law of physics. Is basically between energy, is really about energy balance. It's about how much is expended per day versus how much is consumed per day. So if you consume more calorie through energy dense diets, carbohydrates and all that, that actually worsens brain health. Whereas for green leafy vegetables and fruits, at least that should be consumed on a daily basis. That's what the evidence have shown, because it has antioxidants that help the body to repair. And of course, that should be combined with other interventions like being physically active, and so on and so forth, which are all very, very important. And at the end, helps to keep the vessels clean. And once the vessels are clean, the brain is well perfused and the synaptic connections are maintained and brain health is also maintained.
So Mario, how often do you eat a day?
To be candid, I eat. I'm going to be very candid now since I'm put on the spot. Actually, I hardly eat breakfast and lunch. Yeah. Maybe on weekends, I then do that, and then I eat in the evening, and most after my meals is actually fruits and vegetables, half of what I eat in the evening. Okay. So I eat only what my body, only the calorie that, and I've maintained my BMI at 23, 24, and my weight has remained steady. So
Daphne has a comment on this.
Yeah, I thank you very much, Maiwa. Fabulous presentation. But as Volker mentioned, the interval between meals, it looks like it's getting a very important concept. And I think we have to contemplate further on the concept of intermittent fasting, as this maybe will bring added value along the way, in the sense that our evidence accumulating regarding the functional role of fasting and intermittent fasting, based on the idea that at a certain moment this is so important because some particular modified and non-functional proteins in the body will be consumed, and we have even animal models proving that. And this is very important because this will give us the chance, to the bodies to better recover and reconstruct, and to maintain better, I would say, the healthy state, and implicitly also the brain health in this respect. So on one hand, it's about the balance, as you mentioned, that it's absolutely clear, but also there is a functional added value behind. And I think we may put this on the list of advantages of managing correctly our diet further on, and also our lifestyle. Because if you are active and if you consume, yes, then it's very important. And there is another interesting concept. The more you are doing fasting, the more you have to move. That's interesting because this will keep the balance. I have seen some interesting results, but maybe this might be a subject of a future interesting, I would say, debate, presentation, or perspective in this respect. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. That is certainly true. But I think we have to keep in mind we are eating for a lot of reasons. Of course, we're eating because we are hungry and we need caloric intake. But we are also eating for social reasons, and we are also eating because it's fun to eat, and it's enjoyable, right, to eat. And
pleasure.
There's a pleasure, of course. Right?
At the end, addiction.
Yeah. And I think that these are multiple elements which have to be taken into account when it comes to eating habits. But I think one point is crystal clear. that we are eating too much and we're probably eating too often, and we most often are eating the wrong stuff. And that, I think, and that's very important, has an enormous impact on if you want brain health, and we keep our brains fit even in aging conditions. We'll see, but that, it will be difficult to change. It will be really difficult to change eating habits because it's a multifaceted problem with a lot of emotional and other elements and cultural elements embedded in it. That's for sure. But Mayowa, what do you think is the best way of convincing people to change their dietary habits?
Yeah, I think there are two ways of doing this. First, it might be better to start early, when people are still very young and still trying to develop their own culinary characteristics, what they like, what they enjoy, and things like that. It's good if they are taught to do the right thing from the onset. The second way of convincing people is to show them consequences. If it's possible, and we're trying to work on this actually, develop videos, to educational videos to show people the consequences of their diet. So that helps them to pick something. Meaning, if they're actually eating something that they know may be injurious, then they actually know the consequence, and they know the So if they're making that choice, then at least it is an informed choice. The other thing is behavioral change model, the Michi's model, that is multifaceted. When we want to take a decision to change the way we do things, we need to be motivated. That's just one part of it. The other part of it is that there must be an enabling environment. If, for instance, I want to eat green leafy vegetable, but it's not available, but rather what is available are burgers and fast food, then it becomes very difficult for me to do that. But if the food value chain, the entire food value chain is primed to make it healthy, and there is taxation or some for unhealthy diet or an unhealthy food, then that could also help with positive behavioral change. So it's really multifaceted, like you mentioned. There are social factors, there are cultural factors, there are environmental factors, there are economic factors that influence what people consume. Well, I think the very first place to start is to start with the person and get the person motivated, let the person know the consequences, of preserving brain health through healthy diet.
Okay, Michael, any comment from your side?
Yeah, well, I have two comments. Thank you, Mayowa, for tackling this really difficult issue. It was interesting to see how little weight is given to cultural and regional differences. Considering that, for example, the DASH diet is an invention of the food industry to fight off the general recommendations for Mediterranean diet and so on. So I think there is a lot of competition and misunderstanding going on. So what should we eat? Okay. But on the other hand, we should also ask ourselves, what should we breathe, So this may sound ridiculous. If you live in a congested area, you really have a lot of pollution. And this air pollution is something you cannot escape very easily. But considering perhaps that you could, how often per week or per month, and for what duration should you escape from your city in order to get your particles out of your lungs or out of your body? Is there something we could recommend which is good for the brain? Because we know that the brain is especially vulnerable to toxic substances compared to, let's say, the heart. So the vulnerability of the brain, especially the developing one, is a huge topic. But one question I have for you is, I'm not quite sure whether I understood this anthropomorphic revolution idea, because especially if we think about the air pollution, I think what we need is not a healthy surrounding for human beings. We need a sort of healthy planetary situation. And this comprises also nature and the animals and the flora and the fauna. And what is good for most animals probably is also good for most humans. So I think that this anthropomorphic idea is maybe a little too anthropocentric, and it should include more species than mankind alone. Did I get you wrong? I apologize if I did.
Yeah, so let me explain. Yeah, so essentially what I mean is by an anthropocentric revolution is that the human brain is very central to development. The brain health is also very central to development, to all the SDGs. And in fact, part of the SDG, one of the SDGs, like in one of the last slides I showed, is actually environmental health. And climate change, there was a COP26 climate change, and WHO actually made a presentation on how important human health is to climate change initiatives. Of course, certainly we need a One Health agenda. There's no doubt about it. Planetary health, health of all the other living organisms, because we interact with them every time. We are part of the food chain, really, we may be at the apex of that food chain, and if the base is not strong, then we're going to fall, we're going to collapse. So we depend on the entire, but we are the operator, so to speak. We are the drivers, we are the change agents that have been doing the wrong things in terms of polluting the environment and escalating climate change, but we can also be the change agent that would also drive recovery of the planet and planetary health. So in all of this, human beings are still central in terms of driving the One Health agenda through good brain health and good brain capital, and of course through creativity. So that's why humans are still very important. Now, for the other revolutions, the other industrial revolutions that have happened in the past, they're really about machines, about plants and all that. The human brain is not at the center. This is perhaps the only revolution, that will put, initially it was computer at the center, but now it looks like we're going to put the human brain at the center, because that's still more important than putting computers at the center. And we can drive the change that we want, not only for ourselves, but for other living organisms on the planet and for the entire planet, and perhaps even beyond the planet, which we are already exploring.
Well, I think that's certainly true. Basically, only the human brain volitionally can change the planet. And there may be other influences, of course, which are not human-made, but most of it is human-made, and we realize that more and more. I liked very much the phrasing of the neurologic revolution. That I like that for some reason I'm saying. But is this really true? We had the agronomics revolution, we had the industrial revolution. When you look at that clearer and philosophical, archaeological, historical terms, then many of these revolutions have not really been revolutions. But I like this phrasing, neurologic revolution, very much. I mean, that was the first time I saw it, and I like that for a particular reason. On the other hand, I think we we have to imagine that the human brain is shaping the world. And there's no excuse for that, right? Of course, there are many other influences, right? There may be meteorites crashing to the earth and killing the dinosaurs or something like this. But nevertheless, what's happening today is that we shape the planet, and many feel that we don't shape it in an optimal way. That's for sure, right? We will see. But therefore, I like the idea that neurologists should have a greater impact on politicians for many reasons, or decision makers. Let's say it in a more general Okay, and let me look at the question and answer section here. Oh yeah, there's one question. At what point does exercise become stress, or can we differentiate between stress from exercise?
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I think the concept of stress is about the concept of elasticity. So I think every elastic material has an elastic limit. So I think it's important to be able to titrate exercise to recognize our various elastic limits, both in terms of physical as well as mental and psychological and even social exertion. So it's something that we need to understand. But generally speaking, it's been recommended that if you walk about 7,000 steps a day or walk about 30 minutes a day, you know, like 4 days or more in a week is very beneficial in terms of brain health, in terms of physical fitness, in terms of longevity. You know, but it has to be counterbalanced with the endurance of that particular individual and the elastic limit of that individual before the elastic property loses its strength and then it snaps. So when we talk about exercise and the brain, even though we talk about plasticity, which is very important, but elasticity is also important in terms of stress.
Well, you know, Mayovan, there is an incoming, let's say, concept of fragility. And this fragility concept, you know, is playing that very much. And I must say, from a philosophical and also economical point of view, I think the fragility concept has advantages. And to find out how we can become less fragile as we are developing to be due to a lot of civilizational changes and so forth. The fragility and unfragility or robustness concept certainly is of some interest in this respect. That's for sure. And we should probably think a little bit closer about that. I'm very grateful to Dalet that he is playing that very much now. It's certainly an important aspect of what we are doing. Okay, let me have a look again at the chat room. Michael, any further comment? Not really?
No.
Daphne? Mayova?
I think we are fine so far.
Yeah, so just to comment, frailty is actually a very important concept as has been mentioned. Yeah, frailty and fragility. And with aging and the 100-year life expectancy theory, you know, frailty is going to become more and more important. The bones over time becomes more brittle, and so are the joints, you know. So we need to look at those. Perhaps there may be other ways of renewal or other ways of, you know, genetic therapies in future that may help to maintain agility and maintain youngness, so to speak, despite longevity. You know, so there may be other ways of dealing with those things. Maybe telomere intervention, telomere based, or other therapies that may come in future, you know, beyond diet, beyond other things that lead to frailty and fragility. But it's something that we'll continue to study and understand.
Okay, so the question is, what are you going to eat tonight?
Well, usually, usually I eat a little bit of carbohydrates, but like I mentioned, a lot of fruits. I'm a fruit addict, and I eat vegetables almost every day.
Michael? No, the question was what you're going to eat tonight.
Yeah. As my younger son is coming for dinner, I cook something healthy. So we'll have fish and vegetables together.
Daphne?
I will have a very nice portion of tourbillon. Yes, fish this evening. I have scheduled a fish dinner. Thank you. Great.
And I will have some sashimi tonight. And I will refrain from the soy sauce because that's too salty, right? Just a second. Well, nevertheless, I think.
Good point.
And what will you drink instead?
No, I tell you, Michael, I will drink some nice rosé wine with it.
Okay.
Not too much, a little bit.
I will have a good red wine. Even if I'm eating fish, I will use the reds.
Oh, I will probably go for a rosé from Apulia, but that's usually what I do with it.
Great.
Okay, if there are no more questions, I think was a very nice webinar this afternoon. Let me express my gratitude again to those helping us to bring this about, especially Daphne's team, Christian, and his colleagues who help us with the technological support. Was a good meeting. I think within a month's time, we will have the next Silver Jubilee series webinar, which will probably be on high-tech solutions for neurorehabilitation. It's not completely set yet, but we will keep you informed. So thank you very, very much, all of you, also for the panelists, of course. We had a nice afternoon, and I have to change my diet. Okay, all the best to you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Michael. Bye, Mayova.
Bye.
Volker,
Bye,
good congratulations as always.
Thank
Excellent.
you.
Thank you very much.
Excellent, Volker.
Mayova, can we stay in for a couple of minutes? I have one question.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, that was a good webinar.
Thank you very much. Really great.
Thank you very much for doing that. I think you do a brilliant job on this food issue that is extremely important. Listen, I got an information yesterday afternoon that for the World Congress in 28, Amsterdam, the Netherlands, Gert Kwakkel, of good friend Gert, is applying for a bid. Yeah. I would very, very much appreciate in future that we have a meeting in Africa. We had years ago, as you know, we had some negotiated with guys in South Africa, but that didn't work out, to be honest. But could you think a little bit, right? That needs not be necessarily 28, maybe 2030 as well.
Okay.
That we do a meeting that can be in South Africa, that can be in Nigeria, it can be in Kenya, it can be Dar es Salaam, or in wherever, right? Or Nairobi, or Lagos, Abidjan, wherever. But we should do that.
Absolutely, I agree completely.
Yeah.
We'll work towards that.
Yeah. Think about that.
Yeah.
And the other point is, I had a word with our dearest friend in Korea, Namjoon, on the president-elect issue. And Namjoon is very keen to be the next president-elect. That is fair, that's okay. I mentioned that I have a little bit of a different conception in my mind, as you know. So we will see. Okay. I think I like Namjoon very much. He's a very good man. He's a very good scientist. He's always been with the organization very much, all this. Nevertheless, okay, I would appreciate very much to have you as the next president-elect. You don't tell anyone about that. That's strictly confidential. Eventually, Mayova, we will have a vote on 2 candidates, which is not a problem. That's normal in democratic circumstances, right? We will see. And see what the nomination committee and all this goes. In any case, we could eventually find another gentleman's agreement that Namjoon is doing it for 2 years and then you take over again. And then all of this is possible, right? But he is very keen. He's for many reasons. I can understand that, and I think that's fair enough, and has to be considered. Although my position is a little bit different. Yeah, I would very much appreciate you to be the next president.
Absolutely, I'll be so glad and happy to do that.
No, for many reasons. First of all, you're an excellent scientist, and you are in a part of the world which we have to put our feet on much more diligently than we've done before. Yeah, for many reasons. We will see. Okay,
Thank you very much.
You think about the 2028 or 2030 bid for the next World Congress in Africa, and we stay in contact, and I keep you informed if there are any new developments. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. It was a little bit, but I think we had a good webinar this afternoon.
Absolutely.
Okay. Mayova, until soon, take care.
Thank you.